Hey everyone, welcome back to the YOUnify podcast. If you're new here, my name is Brandyn Keating. I'm the co-founder and CEO of YOUnify, a nonprofit organization helping you flourish and thrive, and I'm also the host of our podcast. Today we're going to be talking with two extraordinary people who have turned profound loss into sustained, purposeful action. Both Rick Padilla and Kari Eckert have lived through the unthinkable, losing a child to suicide. And now they're on a suicide prevention mission with youth empowerment at its core. Rick is a nationally recognized leader in suicide prevention and affordable housing policy, known for building cross-sector systems that improve community well-being. Appointed by the mayor of Denver to establish and lead the city's first office of suicide prevention, he brings deep expertise in public health, behavioral health, and strategic collaboration. With a career spanning housing finance, legislative advocacy, and large-scale program design, Rick is committed to advancing evidence-based solutions that strengthen resilience, expand opportunity, and save lives. Rick, Kari, before we get into the work you've each built, would you be willing to each share a little bit about your sons and who they were?
Absolutely. Robbie was 15 years old at the time of his death. He seemed to be thriving. My husband and I were actually at parent-teacher conferences when Robbie took his life. And I remember that evening being told by his teacher that Robbie was the student in class that others knew he knew the material, and they also knew that he would be the one that would help them with that material. He was smiling, empathetic, outgoing, very well liked.
Mm. And you've actually started a foundation in his name, is that right?
Correct. It's called Robbie's Hope. And we are about empowering young people with their voice to bring conversations of elevating mental health in their community.
Beautiful. And Rick, what would you like people to know about Jack?
Well, Jack was, as with Kari, with the light of my heart. And he was very outgoing. He's a 15-year-old freshman, starting his freshman year. Outgoing, adventurous, rambunctious, little lacrosse player, goalie since he was 5 years old. And what I'd like people to know about Jack is just he was a very empathetic kid. We learned so much more about his wide range of friends and his empathy after he died. And just a wonderful kid, and I miss him dearly.
Losing a child to suicide is, of course, something no parent is prepared for. Could you each share in whatever way feels right what the weeks and months afterwards looked like, and what, if anything, helped you find your path forward?
Quite blurry. Lived in a lot of fog for quite a while. Very early on, recognized that I had to do the work to be able to move forward. And that work was carrying the grief and also looking for the joy in life. Robbie would never want me to stay under the covers, and I wouldn't want to stay under the covers. So I did what I needed to do and very quickly learned that helping others was part of my journey forward. I got a lot from helping young people, from helping my husband with his grief, my daughter, and just taking things a day at a time.
Incredible. Rick, what helped you find your path forward?
As with Kari, the fog that in the questioning and managing the grief can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
For me, it was finding purpose in life. What I've learned since then is that when you've experienced something as catastrophic as losing a child to suicide, is it can do a couple of things. It can bring you together with your family, or it can tear you apart. And we as a family chose to find purpose in our lives, and I changed careers because of that.
Incredible. How extraordinary for you to each be able to find purpose and to focus on helping others. And Rick, you went on to oversee suicide prevention for the city of Denver, and your campaign, You've Got This, was centered on empowering young people. Could you share a little more about what drove you toward that work rather than away from it? Was there a moment when you knew this was what you needed to do?
Very much so. After Jack died, we lost, unfortunately, 5 kids in our district that year, and Jack was the first one. And after Jack passed, a lot of his friends came to our house and they wanted to know what they could do. And that was a turning point for me.
Wow.
The youth voice, what could I do? What could we do as a family? What could we do as a community to support those kids and give them a voice? That was the turning point for me.
Incredible. And Kari, as we sort of previewed at the top, your family created Robbie's Hope Foundation. Could you tell us about Robbie's Hope in a little bit more detail? I know you mentioned it's serving and empowering young people. What does that look like?
Yeah, quite similar to what Rick did. We met with Robbie's friends soon after Robbie passed away, and we really quickly learned that young people were tired of losing young people. And instead of, they wanted to find solutions and be a part of that solution. So what Robbie's Hope is we are a youth-led organization about empowering young people with their voice, bringing their voice to the conversation where decisions are made that affect youth. Whether that be in a legislative space, whether that be in an education space, or whether that be at their dinner table.
Wow.
And we empower young people. We want them to know it's okay to not be okay, and that there's always hope. Hold on, pain ends. Letting young people know what to look for, what could be a sign of suicide in a friend, peer to peer. That's where most conversations happen. And as importantly, what to do when they recognize that something is wrong.
It sounds like it's really touching all of the sort of avenues for change, ranging from the dinner table in their personal lives to, it sounds like, even legislative advocacy. What kind of impact do you see that having on the young people who are involved?
Quite a bit of impact. I'm really grateful. Young people are so impactful when they are given the tools and resources to have meaningful conversations, and they have so many solutions. It's just about the adults in the room listening and sitting beside those youth and allowing them to have their voice instead of just teaching to them. Let's learn together with them.
Incredible. And you've really both made this choice to focus on empowering youth to help other youths, to help other youth. I'm curious about what you see in that peer-to-peer approach that other strategies might miss.
Well, Rick, when you were a teenager, who did you go to when you had a problem? You probably we went to our friends.
Yeah.
That's what young people do. That's what history, and that's why when we have conversations and we empower youth with the tools and the resources, letting them know what to look for, we can change things. We can be preventative versus just thinking a young person is going to go to an adult when they're struggling. I think it's an assumption that a lot of parents make. I probably made that assumption. If Robbie was struggling, he would certainly come to me. He knows that I've got his back. Well, Robbie was struggling, and he never said anything to me or to my husband or to his sister. And we were all there for him. We would have given anything to have the opportunity to help him.
Yeah, it's, it sounds so obvious when you say it, but it's actually quite a profound insight that I think we so often miss when it comes to young people, that they are in many ways the people best positioned to help one another if we can empower them to do so. Anything you would add to that, Rick?
For me, my kind of my approach in trying to figure things out, because when I left the city, I was the housing director for the city of Denver, and we lost Jack in. Many, many years ago, I used to investigate child abuse and neglect. I worked for a large foundation focused on youth, so I had the background. And when I left, I was very fortunate with my colleagues at work. They contributed PTO, over 7 months of PTO. They wanted me to come back.
Wow.
And the mayor asked me to come back, and I said, I can't do housing anymore. And he said, what do you want to do? I said, This is what I have to do. And I was very fortunate in the sense that I came back to do that, and I worked with staff and youth primarily. And we put together a survey, and we budgeted $5 gift cards. And what we did was we worked with clinicians to identify mental health issues. I'm not a clinician, I'm a dad. And we identified 27 behavioral health categories, budgeted some money, and we asked youth, what are you interested in? And we asked them to scale that down. We got 10,000 responses in 10 days. We had to close it down. Did a factor analysis and came up with categories that kind of led what we did at the city in terms of our programming serving youth.
It's fascinating. We so often hear, oh, the youth are apathetic, the youth don't want to get involved. But when you actually authentically invite them in and engage them, it sounds like it just opened the floodgates. And this name that you had for your campaign, You've Got This, is such a powerful message. Where did that come from? And what is it meant to see young people carry it?
Well, where it came from in that period that I was off of work from the city, as we talked about earlier, we had youth come to the house. They came up, we put them down in the room in the basement, and we said 2 rules: put your phones away and contribute, and don't criticize like they do at ad agencies. They came up with 11 things they wanted to accomplish, and we just part of that was through the forums. We did forums, and what we realized was young people were saying, I had asked the question, hey, wouldn't it be great? You're talking about what's going on mental health amongst your peers. Wouldn't it be great to get 500-600 of you together and let's talk about it based on the topics that you're interested in? And they said, that's great, but we don't want adults tell us what the problems are, what the solutions are. We got this. So that's
Incredible.
how we came up with the handle. The kids came up with it, not me.
Beautiful. And so in line with the whole philosophy that you are both carrying forward, even with the name of the campaign. So I'm curious, what is the hardest part of this work as you continue to carry it forward? What would be something that maybe people on the outside don't understand or don't estimate? Kari, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think there's still a lot of parents that are very naive. They really think that this could never happen to their child. And that's, I don't step into parents' lives to invoke fear. You don't get anywhere operating under that type of lens of fear. I want parents to be proactive and to have conversations. I also think the education system, we rely on our schools to educate our children about a lot of topics. And unfortunately, mental health is not a topic that a lot of schools are educating young people about. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for growth in this area. And we have to do it together. We've got this, just like Rick said. This is not the responsibility of just the schools.
Right.
It's not the responsibility of just the parents. We have to do this together. And the only way we're going to do it is about being realistic. Let's look at the statistics. Young people today are struggling at astronomical numbers with depression and anxiety. It's staggering numbers, particularly girls.
Yes.
The boys don't talk about it. We have to talk about this together.
As a community, yeah. And so what do you want parents to know about suicide, about the signs, the conversations, about their own role? What do most parents get wrong, and what do you think they most need to hear?
Never assume. Never make an assumption. You just use the word curiosity. Come to the conversation in a curious, non-judgmental way. I like to say that we have 2 ears and we have 1 mouth. When you have the opportunity to sit down with a young person, use your ears in that proportion. Listen twice as much as you talk. Let that child just say whatever they need to say. And also, as a parent, show some vulnerability. Are you perfect in the things that you do every single day? Do you always, show up your best? Do you bury your feelings under the rug? Or do you show up and say, you know what? Sometimes I do struggle. Sometimes I do feel really sad. Or this person, they really make me anxious. And this is how I handle it. How do you handle it? What would you do in that situation? You got to start these conversations really, really early. And it's about modeling. It's not about talking to, it's about talking with. And you have to step into the space being that person that you want your child to be.
Such a beautiful insight about the vulnerability piece. I think so many parents feel like they have to put up the appearance of being bulletproof, and there's so much of that in our culture, when in reality, what's the phrase, that children will do what you do, not what you say. And so that modeling seems really critical to giving young people the skills to actually be able to communicate their feelings and be able to, sort of practice that that mental health hygiene. On the flip side of the coin of parents, Rick, what would you like young people to know when you're in a room with teenagers? What do you most hope that they take away from their experience?
There's hope. There's hope, and we care. There's a community that cares. There's parents like Kari and myself and others that care, but there's a community that cares. When something like this happens, catastrophic for a family, impacts an entire community. And I'm sure Kari, her community and my community both, it impacted our communities. People want to know, what can we do? So I think really letting kids know that there's hope and that we care. And we're not, as Kari says, we're not going to be judgmental about it. We're going to listen. And I love Kari and I have worked together on a lot of these school-based events and summits. And it always sticks with me what Kari says, 2 ears and 1 mouth. That is critical. Kids respond to that. And I think the vulnerability side that we've talked about as well is key for Hispanic male like myself to get up in front of kids. And Kari and I worked in a lot of school districts, and the kids, I mean, to get up and show your vulnerability, that really, they respond to that. And I think the other thing that I would say is, for me at least, I mean, this issue is so broad in terms of clinicians, parity of pay, of clinicians of private pay versus Medicaid. For me, it's always been focused on destigmatizing the conversation. I think we as adults have stigmatized this conversation around mental health, and we need to stop that because it creates so many barriers for ourselves and our kids as well.
Yeah, on that point of the stigma, there is a lot of fear around talking about suicide. Some people worry that bringing it up to a young person might actually plant the idea, or that educating young people about it might make them feel responsible for their peers. What do you say to these kinds of fears that come up, and are there others that you hear and might be able to address? Kari?
They're myths. The research absolutely shows the opposite. I could have asked Robbie when I walked out the door to those parent teacher conferences if I would have recognized something that he did the few days before or something he said. I could have asked him directly, Robbie, are you considering hurting yourself? Robbie, are you considering suicide? And I would not have changed anything in his mind. What that asking that question directly does is I may have given him the opportunity to say, yes, yes, I am considering hurting myself. And by asking that question, you recognize that there's help available. It might not be me, but there is help available. That's, I think, oftentimes why we avoid those questions, maybe why a young person avoids that question, why a parent does, why a teacher who sees a change in a student, is we don't know what to do with that answer. And if that answer is yes, I am considering hurting myself, you have to hand that person off to a professional to get them help. It's not my responsibility. It would have been as a mother to get him help, but as a peer, it's not your responsibility to fix somebody. It's your responsibility to tell somebody, to get them to that professional. But by asking the question, research shows that you should ask the question.
So, Rick, what are the warning signs that families, friends, peers should be mindful of, should maybe start to have in the back of their head as something that they could recognize? And what should they actually do next if they see those warning signs?
Yeah, there are risk and protective factors that are involved. And I can tell you from my experience that what I know about risk factors today, as a parent, 6.5 years ago when we lost Jack, I may have assumed that those were typical adolescent behaviors. But in total, when you start to look at them, that they're not. For example, Um, changing friend groups, not eating. He would come home and I look in his backpack and his lunch is still there. Finding out that he's sneaking out at night.
Mhm.
Other these risk factors, I would say, not necessarily in Jack's case, but also kids at that age, particularly, I think it's difficult in beginning the 8th grade forward. It's a very difficult time for kids. They have free time. They start to experiment, some of them with substances. That contributes. And sometimes we as parents think, oh, that's adolescence behavior, typical stuff. We'll work through that. But to Kari's point and to your question is, you really got to ask the question about that. You can't be afraid to ask, are you going to hurt yourself? And I just want to backtrack just a quick second is that when in our particular case, when this happened, kids wanted to do a school walkout. The superintendent at the time asked me to come in to talk with him about that. He wanted to frame what the conversation was going to be. He said he was worried about the issue of contagion. So I said, you're not an expert. I'm not an expert. I went to an expert at the university, a psychiatrist that worked in this. And that person said, if it's a high profile suicide like a Robin Williams, you start to really worry about contagion.
Mhm.
He said, with youth, it's a matter of how the media plays out the story. Are they focusing on the death? Are they focusing on some of these risk factors? Are they focusing on, I think, the kind of work that Kari's done, I have done in terms of really kind of showing the broader picture of how kids in the community is responding to a suicide, not the death itself. And I think that's critical. Contagion is real, but we have to realize how we have that discussion with as a community and with our kids, and how the media reports those stories.
Yes, and on the note of communities, and Kari, you mentioned a few minutes ago how important it is that we sort of take a whole community approach, that it is parents, it is youth, it is educators, all working together. Could you share a little bit more on why education on suicide is so vital and when it should start? And what is the case for getting this into schools and communities early?
Well, it should start in early middle school.
Mhm.
In the state of Colorado, most kids go to middle school in 6th grade. And unfortunately, they get a really small amount. The state of Colorado is quite hands off in what it requires of school systems to educate kids on. And this is the case in a lot of states across our country. It's very much district by district or even school by school. But I think we need parents to, ask the schools, ask their educators, what are we doing in this topic? How are we educating kids? What are we showing them? And if you look into the research, it'll show that you should be educating young people about the signs and symptoms of a mental health crisis and what to do. And that needs to start in middle school. And then it's not a one and done check mark thing. It's not a 10-minute
Right.
presentation. It's a continuing conversation. It can be a little bit awkward the first time when you're 12 years old, a little bit much. So we revisit it again. Maybe we introduce it in 6th grade and then we talk about it again in 8th grade. More than one teacher, more than one setting, because all of these things hit different students different ways. But research absolutely shows that we need to do it. There's evidence-based curriculum that's quite simple, very cost effective, and it prevents suicide.
And so once again, taking that holistic approach. And so for somebody who is listening right now, who is either struggling themselves or maybe they're worried about somebody they love, Rick, what would you most want them to hear?
I said it earlier, and I'm a fairly simple guy in that when they hear there's hope, reach out and ask and talk to somebody. If it's a parent, a trusted adult, a friend, if you're feeling that, you're not alone. You need to talk to somebody, and there's resources, because we've all heard this before. It's a permanent solution to temporary problem. And that temporary problem may last a few years. It may last a few weeks. But going down the path of suicide is not the answer.
And Kari, where can people find more information about Robbie's Hope and learn more about the work that you are both doing?
Pretty simple. www.robbies, ROBBIES hope.com. And we're on all of the socials as well. Very simple to find us. But as Rick said, you are not alone. There is always hope. Is it easy? Absolutely not. But you've got to learn to hold on, and you will get through it. Hold on, pain ends.
Amazing. Well, you both are certainly leading for flourishing in very impressive ways. And we will have all the links to connect with Kari and Rick in the description on YouTube and across our socials, and to get support if you are somebody that you know is struggling. Kari and Rick, our time has absolutely flown by today. I'm so impressed by all of the work you're doing. I have one more question for you, which is, what is giving each of you hope right now? Rick, do you want to kick us off?
What's giving me hope is that Kari, she's talked about some of the stats and the evidence-based research that's going on in the state of Colorado. We know we're making an impact. Youth suicide is still the second leading cause of death in our state. But if you look at the trends, certainly from 2018, 2019, 2020, where we're at today, it's trending down. We're not anywhere near where we need to be, because one suicide is too many. I think great work that Robbie's Hope and Jack Strong and others are doing, we're making a difference.
Beautiful. And Kari, how about you? What's giving you hope these days?
Young people, the opportunity to walk beside them and do this work together. They are the ones that are going to change this conversation, and we are going to lower youth suicide rates.
Incredible. Well, thank you again. It's just so inspiring how you have turned your pain into purpose and are using it to help others. Really grateful to have had you join us here today. And again, folks, we'll have all of the links to connect with Kari and Rick below in the YouTube description and across our socials, and the links to get links and phone numbers to get support if you or someone you love needs it. And we'll see you next time. Thanks again, both of you. Such a pleasure to meet you.